Good afternoon. It's Charity Colleen Crouse. How are you doing today? It's March 19th, 2023. That would be how many days? It would be 8 days after March 11th, 2023. On March 11th, 2023, it was what is St. Patrick's Day celebrated. The next day, well, after the festivities were over, I found something. I found a grill. It's nice. After all that's happened throughout the last year and a half, it's nice to find a grill. Somebody just left it full grill. That would have been of use on the 11th, but was found on the 12th, which would have been 7 days ago today. Yesterday, there was something that was left. This happens periodically. There are strategic dumps. My understanding is what happens is it's dumped, and then there's a certain period of time wherein if somebody finds it, that means something. If somebody doesn't find it, that means something else. Among the items that were left, disposed of, discarded, at least by yesterday, at least within the last 72 hours, because prior to that, there would have been more water damage, were these items right here. Now, I've done an inventory of these items. All these items are very sufficient, and here's the thing. These items are literally the items that I found in Walmart last January when I received a amount of money and called in an option, of which I had three. So far, I've only used that one option. That option would have allowed for the purchase of tent space or tents, sleeping bags, lanterns, and stoves, just like this one. This is actually the literal model I saw at the Walmart. It also involves a propane tank. You need the propane in order to be able to use the stove. A certain number of these per a certain number of tents. It would have included 100 family tents that could have housed up to 6 people, and then another 200 tents that could house 1 to 2 people. That's a total of at least 400 adults and up to 200 to 400 children. A total of 600 people is what I'd understood. And my anticipation was what would happen is it would be a sort of encampment wherein for 6 months we would work together collectively. We would work together collectively, and we would take what we had, which would have been something I would have contributed, and then they would have built on them and would have built their own stock. So within 6 months, they would have had their own stock, and they could have used that stock to purchase either a down payment or an actual home. It just so happened that I have elsewhere, which I won't put on camera right now, what I found at exactly the 6-month mark that was connected to a notice of a group of people who happened to be in another country, but happened to be among the people that I understood were at stake, so to speak, at that time in January of last year, that were announced to have been previously resided in tents and had just received housing, right? Now, I contend that what they said took 4 years could have been done in 6 months. And so what that would mean is another 6 months later, after they transitioned into their homes, what they had to start out with, if necessary, could have been provided to another group of people. And then within 6 months, they could have done the same. That means what? Well, that means that that would have come to yield around last month. However, what I understand is somebody used what was going on that day, where I received that money, as a 13-month temporary line of finance, didn't they? And so what we have is pretty much what we would have started with last year, except it's missing the tents. And it's specifically and strategically missing the tents. It's almost like a backhanded slap. Now, on another level, what this could mean is that this would be the third round. These would be part of the supplies you would start out with, except you would actually have a tent. And you would also have had the sleeping bag of not actually an inflatable air mattress. I have found 3 inflatable, brand new inflatable air mattresses in that same time frame, actually fitting the timeline. 3 inflatable air mattresses. I have 2. One of them I did not take. The last one I did not take for a specific reason. including because I suspected it might be connected to this. It's a big difference if you're talking about two stock issues for two groups of people as what they would need to start up their livelihood, up to and including getting a mortgage or actually owning their own house. The money that would have been made in connection with what we did for those 6 months was more than substantial enough for us to own our own home. This wasn't about getting a rental lease. This wasn't about getting somebody to sponsor us or give us a room in their home. We would have owned our own home flat out after 6 months of working hard together, even if we had to live in tents and we had to work with a propane-powered stove and we had to do things within a certain finite area wherein we did things like the kind of things I was doing. What would I have contributed? Well, what I contributed was substantial enough that it got stolen twice and proved to be very lucrative for those who stole it. That's what I would have contributed. Other people would have contributed other things. And in the meantime, I tracked it. I tracked those 6 months, and I've tracked the last 6 months. We could have had two groups of people, at least 600 people, that would have had their own homes after 6 months. Instead, somebody, I guess, believed that 600 people's worth of collective capital development that also would have provided the premier stock issue on our incorporation in order to support ourselves and then do what we needed to do after that was supposed to be somebody else's 13-month line of finance. And at the end of the 13 months, all that they would have or all that they would be willing to acknowledge that we were due would be this. Well, I mean, there's other items too, but that is the reason I understand we would still be on the street. Because those other items are what? Those other items are connected to things that only make sense if you're willing to do things that are illegal, including very illegal, and or things that are not even necessary based on the kind of material conditions that people like us are dealing with. Now, I understand that the kind of people I'm talking about might have different kinds of environments, including in climate, including proximity to water, including potable water, including shower or bath facilities, including the kinds of food they're going to have access to, fresh fruits and vegetables, versus, say, something that can be stored for a long period of time, but requires a specific kind of cooking implement, right? And having a propane-powered stovetop is very different than having a coal or wood-burning grill. And this is already known, right? So you have to account for the cost of the propane and the disposal of the canisters and what it would mean to use the propane, including in an environment where it would be safe to use it, right? But with the environmental conditions I've been subjected to, and environmental conditions I understand at least people in the Texas or the southwest area of the United States would have been subjected to, even with a cold spell. And by the way, even with ice storms, it wasn't completely undoable. The problem is how much money other people make based on exploiting us and lying to us. Please understand, I'm more than 18 months without a driver's license or birth certificate because for whatever reason, the court seemed to think it was justified to deny demanding that whoever said they were entitled to possess my property also got to possess my birth certificate and driver's license for up to 18 months. And based on the derivative processes he and or his trust members set up at the end of 18 months, all they would be willing to pay out in connection with using me and my livelihood for some short-term line of finance of 13 months is exactly what I would have already purchased myself in connection with other people going on 13 months ago, before the war in the Ukraine started. Now, the truth of the matter is, what if this was the third turnover? What if that second group of people just got their stock and they just moved into their house and unfortunately, based on what's we already know has happened, another group of people are put into a position where they need that kind of support, including that kind of support with each other. All right? And it just so happens that within the last 10 days, I've been able to acquire another 10 that somebody else had left for a substantial amount of time, right? So there's 3 different ways I could have put together what I had already put together last year. What the problem is in the meantime, who is making the adjustments and who is making the budgets that are doing what? You see, my understanding is what this actually means is I'm supposed to take this, and this is supposed to be somebody else saying, well, I'm giving you your stock. No. Excuse me. By July of last year, the stock we made was worth a lot of money. It was worth enough money for us to not only put the down payment on our house, but I contend, depending upon where we were and what kind of housing arrangement we were willing to accept, to have purchased our house flat out and or to have secured our mortgage so we could have used that mortgage for our own investments. We were not supposed to be in a tent in another 6 months. And we sure as hell were not supposed to be in a tent for a third round of 6 months. See, what happened is we did our work. And somebody else stole our identity, and they're supposed to be getting this. Because we're not just talking about somebody who was brought in under fraudulent pretenses and somebody put them through a completely contrived, fake legal proceeding to steal from them and traffic them. We're talking about people who made a justification to get the court to go along with them in that. And at the end of their 13-month line of finance in anticipation of their April 1st April Fool's joke at the circuit court, this apparently is all that they could earn, which is even less than I started with by the time after I had worked, even while I was on the street with no birth certificate and no driver's license on my own. What were they doing? That after the court agreed to conspire with them at that level, this is what they would end up with. This isn't meant for us. This isn't meant for me. This is meant for them. After 13 months of stealing my life and my identity and all the work I had done, which is at a very, very significant level, this is all that they could contrive to say that time frame was worth. This is all the work they did on their own. And by the way, even this work they had to steal from someone. We're talking literally at this point, billions of dollars that have been squandered because the wrong people were in the wrong positions doing the wrong thing. See, the problem is it's the same setup every month. You didn't take the crunk. You are not willing to take the other stuff and do illegal things with it and hustle shit on the street. The problem is you end up infinitely poorer at the end of your crunk duty than if you just said no. So who is on the inside with my identity? Who is in their house, so-called house, their so-called house right now, screwing things up, setting up illegal deals that at the end of their 13-month term, this is what they ended up with. If I take out the chemicals, if I take out the drugs, if I take out the component materials to make other drugs, this is what they fucking earned? This is what they produced in that time. See, at this point, this kind of arrangement only makes sense in one condition, and it's not possible for it to be executed appropriately if you're willing to do their crunk deal. You would fuck it up, and you would get a lot of fucking people killed. The only way it makes sense is if you're being strategically deployed to entrap other people into poverty so they end up on the street. So a bunch of people that are doing incredibly criminal things can try to say they paid for it by leaving a setup like this. Get the fuck out of my house. Get the fuck out of my house and get the fuck out of my country. You had no fucking right to do this. Every single time you post, every single time I have to listen in the background to you bitch about your stock, I know what you did. You know what you did. And everybody else should know what you did, and you should have to pay for it at the fucking rate you earn. Your turn. You put your fucking family, you put your fucking trust on the fucking street. I told you motherfuckers last year, 21 days, we would have owned this shit. But none of you had the fucking courage to put down your fucking joint. None of you had the fucking courage to acknowledge what you fucking did. Now you're up to 18 fucking months, guys. 18 fucking months, and this is all you can fucking earn. You blew millions and billions of dollars. You murdered people all over the fucking world. You created a great spectacle in this Ukraine war, but there were already wars. You created how many fucking years and how many countries were destroyed because you lied about your surplus? You lied about your financing? You lied about your insurance? At the end of fucking 18 months of me working my ass off and you repeatedly and compulsively stealing it, this is what you actually fucking earn. I'm not accepting it. I am not accepting it.